don't know if you know, but I've been reading AP Lang essays for many years. Over the years, when I've been assigned to the argument essay, I've noticed that many students struggle with evidence. And I'm not just talking about selecting it. I've already made a video about selecting evidence for your argument prompt. And if you haven't seen that video yet, you should. You can find it linked right below this video in the description. And that description is right near where you can conveniently find things like the like button, subscribe button, super thanks button, and channel membership button. Clicking any of those helps the Garden of English, and that allows me to help you more. Anyway, I've noticed that when students add evidence to their argument essays, they often don't quite do an adequate job. This is most often because the evidence most students include in their paragraphs is seldom specific. And specific evidence is a must to score a 3 or a 4 in row B of the scoring rubric. So today, let's get into some quick tips so you can make your evidence the best you can make it when you add it into your essays. Before we do though, I wanted to stay local. And give a shout out to the AP Lang students in Ms. Cody's class. Go Millbury Woolies. Ms. Cody is basically the best, so for you students, make sure that you listen to her as she prepares you for exam day. Alright, when I went over how to pick your evidence for your argument essay, I showed you an organizer that gave you categories to actually pick from. I also told you that you want to somewhat specifically label where your evidence was coming from so that we could include that somewhat specific label in your topic sentences. I created a video about topic sentences too. I then taught you how to write those topic sentences based on the organizer in the prior video. All of these things, of course, are linked right down below. If you haven't seen those videos, check them out. So today, as we go into adding evidence into your paragraphs, the first thing I'm going to do is add a third column to that original organizer that should be familiar to you. This column will be labeled as specific evidence, and you're going to copy your specific evidence right into that in the organizer. What you're going to do here is you're going to describe your evidence in as much detail as possible. When you do, I have some incredibly specific instructions for you. First, you must summarize your evidence in no less than 3 sentences, but you may not go over 5. Having less than 3 sentences doesn't allow your evidence to be specific enough, but having more than 5 sentences often moves students into summary mode. That is not what we're going for on exam day. Both violations make it hard to score a 3 or a 4 in row B. Now second, you must focus on how precise your verbs are when you describe your evidence. The stronger your verbs, the more accurately you can convey your meaning. Think about it. What's the difference between a word like reply and a word like retort? One suggests a conversation, the other suggests an argument. If you were to describe an argument, you'd want to use the better verb. Now, this third tip comes from a colleague of mine, Tamara Hanford-Schultz, who's an AP Lang teacher at Eastview High School in Georgetown, Texas. She recommends that the best way to know if you've included specific evidence in your paper is by underlining where you've placed and put in proper nouns. Proper nouns are names used for individual persons, places, or official organizations. They're always capitalized. So what's an easy test to see if you've been specific enough? Well, do you have any proper names of people, places, businesses, or organizations in your paper? No!
No soup for you!
Since you actually want the metaphorical soup, which is to make a 3 or 4 in row B, make sure that you add in proper nouns in your evidence. Tell of real specific peoples, places, organizations as you pick what you're going to use to prove your point. So now that you have these tips, let's see them in action. I'm going to start by practicing writing specific evidence in my new organizer. Once it's filled in, it will look kind of like this. You can find blank organizers linked up right in the description with everything else. Now, once I've written out my specific evidence, I'm going to copy it into my body paragraph. Let's see how this would work. I'm going to start with the topic sentence I created in my last video. And we're still producing the essay that responds to the warning labels prompt. Just about anyone can admit that recent controversies surrounding the holiday marketing practices of private and public institutions highlight the incredibly temperamental nature of the human psyche, making it quite hard to entirely monitor the troublesome content that's out there. I'm going to have to include my evidence that specifically describes the controversies surrounding holiday marketing practices of both public and private institutions. To start the next sentence of my body paragraph, I'm going to use a discourse marker that strengthens my line of reasoning by signaling to my reader that I'm about to include an example. I can use a phrase like for example, or for instance, or take for example how, or anything like that that indicates an example is about to follow. For this example, I'm going to actually use that phrase, for example. Quick, easy, classic. So after I put that phrase in the paragraph, I'm now going to add my evidence. by just copying down exactly what I specifically had in my organizer. For example, a few years ago, in order to signify their transition to the winter holiday season, Starbucks decided to replace their ornamental Christmas cups with ones that were merely colored red. In response to this change, many individuals protested this by calling it the newest manifestation of the war on Christmas. Of course, this figurative conflict was magnified since in about 2010, around the same season, there had been consistent reports of schools and municipalities relabeling their Christmas concerts, pageants, and decorations as holiday events and adornments. Also important to note here is that since the early 21st century, the public has been encouraged by the media to greet others with happy holidays instead of the more traditional Merry Christmas. Now let's test this evidence to see if it stands up to the specific evidence criteria that I gave you before we actually showed you how to put this in the paragraph. 1. Is this evidence between 3 and 5 sentences? Yep, it's 4. Does it match the second of the criteria? Do I use strong and precise verbs? Yep, I use signify, decided, replace, colored, protested, calling, magnified, relabeling, encouraged, and greet. Smacking. And 3, have I included any proper nouns in my description of this evidence? Yep, Starbucks it is. And though I didn't label a specific media company, school, or municipality, my mentioning these still works because these events were happening all over the place. So I can rely a bit on the universal experience that most people will have had with what was mentioned here. And the readers of this essay will consider their own specific instances when they experienced what I described. And they'll realize, yes, they too knew that that specifically happened. And that's how you do it. Just because you can now add specific evidence into your paragraph doesn't mean that you've earned a 5 yet. What you also need to do to make sure you secure that 5 is to learn how to produce the best commentary ever for your arguments. And you can do that by watching this video right over here. No. Read. Come on, you just gotta read off the screen. No. Oh my gosh. I can't even believe I can't do this. No. Ugh, here we go. No more mess ups. Can't even read. Redo that. That's for sure.